It's time for the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin. Join the Salty Dog and his captain, Ted Yoho. Search for the Ward Scott Files on Facebook, Vimeo, and over 30 audio platforms, including Apple and Spotify. Now here's your host, the Salty Dog, John Martin.
Welcome to the Ward Scott Files, hosted by yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, and my friend, Captain Ted Yoho, and former congressman. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning. How you doing, John? Great to see everybody. And I'm captain of a pontoon boat.
Yeah, well, we're both co-captains of this pirate ship, as I like to call it.
That's
we welcome everybody to join us, and we're glad everybody's here. Well, we're going to start out off the bat with a statewide story that actually could have impacts across the country because of what Florida does. We're kind of leading the way in a lot of things. We got the White House, the cabinet, the Congress, all of them members of the state of Florida. But Ted, you have a lot of knowledge of this, and tell us what's proposed to happen at the state legislative level and your concerns about it.
Well, it's a positive and a negative, because of the unknown. There's a bill being introduced, and he must be a relative of yours, Jonathan Martin. And,
Not that I know of, but go ahead.
And it's SB 852, and it's to do an analysis of getting rid of property taxes in the state of Florida. So think about that. Personal property taxes, homes, things like that, goes away. And I'm in favor of that. Anytime you get rid of taxes, that's a good thing, but you got to worry about what comes after that. They're talking about decreasing spending, which is always a good thing in government. But then they're talking about a state consumption tax and a local consumption tax. And I think that's where the devil's in the detail when you look at that. And this is something I've been pondering for a long time. Property taxes, we all agree that we have to have some form of government. Limited government is better. I think we're all in agreement of that. So the property taxes, what are they based on? And I said to the example, we built a house here. It's going to get appraised probably in the high six figures. And it's 2,562 square feet of living space. And we've got homes in the area, mobile homes that are the same size, and they may be 30 years old. And so what do you base the value on? Is it the value of the house, or is it what taxes are for? And they're for government services. Roads, infrastructure, security, police forces, running the county, and all those things. And so when you look at a house like ours, we've got 2 occupants. The one I just described, it has 6 occupants. So who's going to use more government services? Is it the one with just my wife and I, or is it the one with 6 people in it? And I think there's a better way we can do property values. You can do it on square footage, because if you look at our house, Carolyn and I did probably over 50% of the labor. So we got sweat equity in there, which increased the value of the house. The other one, it's a 30-year-old property that probably hadn't been maintained real well. And so should I pay more taxes on a house that we put all the sweat equity in that's the same size as this one? And I'm throwing that out there, not to say, oh, poor me, look, I'm going to have to pay all these taxes. We can pay those, but I'm thinking, what is the best way to do it? Is it per capita, or is it square footage? And then when you think about if the state gets rid of property taxes, what are we going to do to make up that revenue? Because Florida is great right now. We don't have a personal income tax. Is this going to lead into a personal income tax down the road? And so I'm throwing that out there to the listeners and get feedback from you, John. What do you think the best way to go on this, and that we can help direct this?
Well, I had an idea a long time ago that I still think it might be a good idea. That, you mentioned that we're basically our state sales tax pays for everything in a sense. It's our, because we don't have income tax,
right?
But there are a lot of entities, and I'm not trying to pick on one or the other, so I'm not even going to talk about the entities, but there are various ones that have sales tax exemptions. Right. And some of these have been going on for years and years and may or may not be justifiable. I've always thought that they ought to have like a 4-year window where they say, okay, every tax exemption is going to sunset 4 years from now. And between now and then, you have to re-justify it and debate it and vote it back in, and it would stay. But if it doesn't get voted back in, it leaves after 4 years. And sales. I've always thought that would be something that Florida should consider.
I love that sunset clause, and I think we should do a lot of legislation on a federal level on a sunset clause. To reevaluate it, that forces the legislatures, the members of Congress, to relook at that and look at the impact of what happened over the last, whatever that period of time, that sunset clause, 3 to 5, 10 years, whatever it is. Look at it to say, do we want to keep doing this? And that I think really drives oversight, and I think it's the same thing on the state level here. So I would highly recommend that. And I think the property tax, it's a very interesting thing. I don't think anybody would say, heck yeah, I'd like to get rid of my property taxes. Do it on your primary residence. We own several homes in Florida, 2 of them are vacation homes. And so should I get a tax exemption on that or just your homestead? And I think, for me, homestead, the one I live in, I think that should, I would like to look at this further and discuss the options on this.
Well, and you mentioned about consumption tax, which is essentially sales tax. One of the things that concerns me and what you were talking about is the idea of the local consumption tax, because a county like where I'm living here in Alachua County, which is that big blue lake in the middle of a sea of red, they never met a tax that they didn't love. And they don't use the taxes, in my opinion, properly. Like, for instance, the gas tax. The gas tax, it seems like a no-brainer that the majority of the gas tax should go to maintaining, improving, and maybe expanding the road system. But in Alachua County, they don't see it that way. They use everything but the roads.
Green spaces and parks and things like that, and they'll use it to commission another study. What we're talking about, consumption tax, if you go back to when you and I were running for office, the big push was the fair tax, and that was a consumption tax. And I really liked that. The thing I didn't like it was we had to give money to the government that would send back a rebate to us to offset the money we send in. And anytime you send the government money, it kind of gets lost in that black box. Where did it go? And so this is something I think is going to be interesting to discuss down the road, and we'll see where it leads.
Yeah, and the other thing you talked about, and before the show started, we were talking about the potential of a big economic development. And I'm not trying to pick on it because I'm a Bass Pro fan, but they're getting ready to build basically an empire not too far from you, and another one down in the Keys, like you were talking about. Right. And I'm not opposed to that in any way, shape, or form. But you mentioned that it would probably elevate your property value, sure, which is good and bad. People always talk about, my property value is going up, but that only matters if you're going to sell. Because in my case here where I live in kind of an ancestral home that's been in my family since the 50s. And I have no intention of selling. Now, what my heirs do after I'm gone is up to them. But so my property values going up don't really help me in that sense, because I don't plan on selling, but I may have to pay more property tax, so because of something that developed near me or something. So it's kind of complicated, but at the end of the day, Ted, I just like them to figure out the simplest way possible, really.
Well, this is something else I thought about since you brought that up. If we were to look at the whole government and revamp it, and say between the ages of whenever you enter the workforce, some of us went in real early, and pick a number, 16 to 65, you pay taxes. And when you become 65 and older, I think there should be a reward for living that long, provided you pay taxes all your life, you lived in the confines of the law, you're a good citizen. Not that I want a good citizen score like China has. But I think there should be a reward for living a long, productive life, and maybe reduce property taxes or your medications and things like that, to where the end stage of life, when people have to go into hospice or they get cancer, terminal cancer, That's what breaks a family. And I think those are things that are outside of the box thinking, but it's a reward for being a good citizen of the United States of America. And it would only be for citizens. You know, we can't do what the Obama administration has done. And this may be a good segue to go into your next topic.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Well, we'll just have to stay tuned with that. And again, if you are
throwing it out there for fodder, food for
absolutely
thought for the next show.
And if people want to chime in and let us know what they think, we'd love to have your input. So go on the Facebook page, the Ward Scott Files, put your information in there, ask your questions, and we'll do our best to try and answer that. And by the way, we're going to improve on all of those things. Our show is expanding, and we greatly appreciate you joining our pirate ship every week. So we're going to move into
right.
Go ahead, Ted. I'm sorry.
I said, and support the sponsors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to move into a story kind of on the national level, and this comes to you from NBC News, although I could have used a wide variety of publications. Kash Patel, a longtime loyalist to President Trump, we're going to talk about that in a minute, was confirmed by the Senate on Thursday as director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, otherwise known as the FBI, an agency he has talked about, and this is not my words, this is the article's words, drastically restructuring while echoing Trump's claims of weaponization of the Bureau's powers in its Capitol riot investigations, January 6th, of course, and other recent cases. So the first thing I want to talk about on that is the terminology they use. What exactly, in your opinion, is a longtime loyalist to Donald Trump? What does that mean exactly?
I don't know.
I don't know what that means.
You know, anybody that's in his camp, man, you're a long-term loyalist. If you wear a MAGA hat, you know, you're a part of that crowd. But I think it does cut out an attitude, a perspective of how they look at, you know, the government and what has gone on since the Obama years, maybe the Clinton years. Actually, you can go back to Woodrow Wilson when they started to be real progressive and pushing a lot of this stuff through. And I think a loyalist is somebody that stands by his side and that will support his agenda. And I've met Kash, I've talked to him. And if people really want to know a good sense of Kash Patel, there's a documentary. I assume this is okay. I can talk about the documentary. It's called
Absolutely.
Plot Against the President. A Plot Against the President. And it was during that time period when Trump and Melania came down the Trump Tower escalators. It starts then, and it talks about all the things that were going on to make sure Donald Trump didn't get elected. Kash Patel was a big part of that. It was very instrumental in outing a lot of the people that were doing nefarious things and illegal things, including the FBI, that led to the impeachments that should never have happened. And I think this is great that he's there. And I hope they go back after James Comey if they can.
Yeah, we're going to talk about him in just a second because, you know, people need to remember what was happening in the FBI going back to Comey and even before him and certainly after him. But you know, the thing about this whole loyalist thing that they talk about, it's not like President Trump picks only people that agree with him 100% of the time. I mean, if you look at two of his major cabinet picks, one is Tulsi Gabbard, and she actually voted for one of the first two impeachments against President Trump.
I was surprised he let that slide.
Right. And then the other is RFK, who was opposed to Trump in the beginning, wanted to be president, and the Democrats essentially drove him off. And so, you know, President Trump, Donald Trump, and that's why I talk about our show being kind of a pirate ship. We welcome everybody to join. Donald Trump is the ultimate captain of a pirate ship because everybody is able to join. They just need to start rowing into it's not really loyalist, Ted, to me. It's more America first. If you believe in making America great again and America first, Donald Trump is with you, whether you 100% agree with him or not.
If you buy into that mission of what he's trying to accomplish, and that's the thing, you should be mission oriented. You know, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, it's what's best for the nation. And right now, I think the majority of the nation believes that Donald Trump's vision of where we're going, as he said, the golden age of America, is where we're going, and you need people. He got burned that first administration because he got surrounded by the establishment, and those people weren't loyal. Reince Priebus, Paul Ryan, the conversations I had in private with those guys, they said, we really don't like this guy. We want to, he's the president, so they're going to work with him some, but they worked as bad against him as the Democrats did.
Yeah, and it's even worse because they're, in a sense, stabbing you in the back. Sometimes, what are the songs about keeping your enemies even closer? I mean, it's just unbelievable. And the question I would have is really, what is anyone? Forget Donald Trump for a second. What is anyone supposed to do when they talk about appointing people? Are they supposed to appoint the best and the brightest that are going to work like on America First, or should they appoint their enemies? I mean, would Donald Trump be getting more praise if he made the Secretary of Labor, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? I mean, we know what she did for labor in New York City when she basically cut out 20,000 jobs in her own district. Is that who he's supposed to appoint, Ted?
No, but on the Democrat side, that's what they would do because they fall in line. And I think he likes that sparring with people that will challenge on some things. And I think this is a good thing. And it's the team. He's picked. He's, in his view, he's the owner of the team. He's the captain of the team. He's the coach of the team. And I think at this point in our nation's history of where we were headed, we need somebody like that kind of whips everything in shape. And I look forward to the disruption he is causing to that establishment and the reorientation of that, because I think America is definitely going to be stronger down the road. Generations from now, we'll look back at this. Just looking at him going into the U.S. Treasury, say, we're going to look at the gold. And I'll guarantee you they're going to look at the quality. They'll take some of those bars, they'll have them analyzed, they'll look at serial numbers. And we need to do that because that's something I don't think anybody has seen in over 40 years. Well,
Ted, it kind of reminds me of what a wise old Democrat once told me, a guy named Sid Martin, my dad.
I might know who that is.
Yeah, he told me, never be afraid, never think you have to be the smartest man in the room. He said, surround yourself with smart people, listen to them. Like he was noted as having the best staff in Tallahassee when he was up there.
Your dad was great.
Listen to them and then make your decision. But once you make your decision, then everybody's got to be on board right then.
That's
what Trump does, I think, to be honest.
Leadership is having the ability or the backbone to make a decision. In Washington, what I notice is there's an aversion of making a decision. I've said this on the Ward Scott files in the past, because if you make a decision, you've hung your head out there or you stood above the crowd and people are going to throw stuff at you. But if you make the decision, if you've been brought in to be a leader, you've got to make those decisions. And then if it's not the right one, you work to make things right.
Yeah. Well, back to this Patel story. Kash Patel. Yeah. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Kash Patel getting confirmed yesterday as the new director of the FBI. But back to this NBC story. It says Patel has close relationships with a network of conservative former FBI agents. And some of them have been screaming to the heavens to get him back on there. They've been pushed out over the last several years, but this lady named Julie Kelly, a conservative commentator who described herself as a friend of Patel's, predicted that Patel would do what needs to be done at the FBI, which is not just dismantle this agency from the top headquarters down to 56 FBI field offices, but also hold accountable those agents who have used their accountability power to weaponize the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country and probably the world against political foes. To me, happy days. I hope she's right. What are your thoughts on that, Ted?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think your political foes, James Comey, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, they weaponize that. Now, the field agents, we had an incident December 18th of 2023, where I got a death threat from the AOC stuff when I was in Congress, and it was credible. I get those quite frequently still today, and so I called the FBI office up. It was a restricted number. I gave the time stamp. It was 8:15 in the morning, and they tracked this guy down. He was in Seattle, Washington, a keyboard junkie, and they tracked him down and they arrested him and they arraigned him, and he had to come to Jacksonville for charges of threatening, former public official. And those FBI agents, I mean, man, the work they did, and I think they tracked that guy down in under 3 weeks. From an email, from a phone call timestamp that went to my phone, they could back trace where that came from. And so those guys, you got to applaud. But it's the people at the top that have a bad agenda that's working against our president. I mean, that's treasonous. And I hope, again, Patel goes after that. And for the people that may have just tuned in, a plot against the president, a documentary. Kash Patel's in there a lot. Very well spoken, very sharp, and a lot of energy. It's going to be a new day.
Absolutely.
It'll make a better and more respected agency.
Before we get on to the newest part of the day, I want to take you back for a minute because they talk about how the FBI, like somehow what Kash Patel and the President Trump have been talking about is, hadn't happened or is, fictions, all that kind of stuff. I want to play a video for people just to remind them. This is former director of the FBI, James Comey, admitting to basically playing games and take advantage of the newness of the Trump administration and essentially ruin the career of a really good man and a strong patriot to the United States of America, even threatening his family in a way. Yep. So we're going to play this in James Comey in his own words. Check it out.
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration. And in both of those administrations, there was process. And so if the FBI wanted to send agents into the White House itself to interview a senior official, you would work through the White House counsel, and there'd be discussions and approvals and who would be there. And I thought, it's early enough, let's just send a couple guys over.
So there's James Comey, in his own words, not my words, admitting that he did something that he knew was against general protocol and procedure just to try to take advantage of a situation. And as I said before we went to the video, literally ruin the life and to a certain extent his family of Flynn, Mr. Flynn, who is not only a great patriot, served this country admirably, but would have been, I think, terrific in that post. And Comey destroyed that and laughed about it, basically.
He did. And General Flynn, I had the opportunity to meet him and talk with him. It did, like you said, it destroyed his life. And his son almost was, he was suicidal, but they got him out of that, and it broke him financially. There's a great documentary on him, too. And you ought to go through that. And he tells you he was a Democrat. So here's a Democrat, and Comey, Democrat, put under, I think it was Obama. And so they're going after their own because Michael Flynn had dared to challenge the policy of Obama, and Obama went out to destroy this guy. You talk about weaponization of agencies. That's the kind of garbage and crap we need to get away from. And Trump's going to do that. It's going to be ugly for a period of time, but I think it's going to be the best thing for the nation.
Yep. I'm glad that Kash Patel has joined the pirate ship. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Check out the sponsors you're about to see. Support them. And if you'd like to become a sponsor, you'll see a tagline on how to do that. We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All bees poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
Well, welcome back to the Ward Scott Files, hosted by myself, John Martin, and our great friend and colleague, Congressman Ted Yoho and Captain Yoho. Thank you for joining our pirate ship. And I hope you will support the sponsors that we have out there. And you can now see our show on YouTube at the Ward Scott Files, hosted by John Martin and Ted Yoho. So check it out. We're expanding all of the time. And we greatly appreciate everybody coming in. Well, you know, yesterday, Ted, marked officially, even though February is kind of a short month, of the first month of Donald Trump's in office. Right. So I thought we'd talk about a little bit of the highlights of his first month. I mean, we could do a week's worth of shows just on that right now, but I'm using a publication called the Daily Signal, and this is their 5 choices, and I pretty much agree with them. So let's talk about it. So first, I want to read this. We talked about this a couple of times, but I think it's important. The CBS poll that came out about 2 weeks ago said that 70% of Americans across voting lines think Trump is doing exactly what he campaigned on. So promises made, promises kept. And that poll was released on February 9th. And I haven't seen anything that would indicate that has changed. So the first thing on their list, I don't think they're in any particular order, although this one is certainly huge, is securing the border. And this is from the words of this publication called the Daily Signal. It says here, 2 days into his second term, Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border, enabling him to deploy additional personnel to the border and directing the acting secretaries at that time of Department of Defense, Homeland Security to finish the border wall. And this statistic jumped out at me. The White House has touted January's 36%, just in January, decline. He was only in there for 10 days in January. 36% decline in border apprehensions, resulting in the lowest number of illegal aliens apprehended along the border in almost 5 years. So going back to it, they call it the Trump effect.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? That's a major accomplishment, wouldn't you say?
Well, there's a new sheriff in town, and people know that. And again, Trump came in that first administration. He got snowballed by the establishment. He knows better this time. And what President Biden did in his administration with Mayorkas, it was treasonous to this nation. I mean, what they did is it just, I hope it never gets repeated in this country. It's happened in other countries. But Trump has brought the hammer down, and it's rule of law, and it needs to be that way. It's good. And it's going to be good to look at these results. It's going to be good for the future generations of American They need to fix some things, and I assume they will, like our labor issues with especially farm labor and things like that. That's critical, because if we don't fix that, we're going to become more dependent on other nations for food, and that's a national security risk.
Yeah, and they call it the Trump effect in this article, which I don't disagree with. But there is a Biden effect, and we talk about promises made, promises kept.
Yeah,
Joe Biden didn't break all of his promises. There was one related to this issue that he absolutely kept and campaigned on, and this is what people voted for.
Right.
I don't think they were paying attention, but I want to take you back down memory lane. This is from the presidential debate before Joe Biden became the nominee and ultimately the president. Check this out, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
5 words you pronounce
now
wrong.
That's a promise made and a promise kept right there, to surge the border. This wasn't something that happened accidentally, Ted. It's something that Biden campaigned on, carried out. They surged the border literally. And you remember there were videos of people going, thank God for President Biden, and wearing Biden shirts as they're illegally crossing the border with flags from other nations. I mean, it's insane, but we're getting over the Biden effect. Thank God we're in the Trump effect now.
Thank God for that. And, that was that video you played last week of that lady wanting to raise the American flag at one of the national parks, cussing this nation and wanting to have the politics of the nation she left because she didn't like it to come here. And so this is the thing, exactly what needs to happen in this country. And again, it's treasonous what that administration did. And, good days are ahead for America.
Well, I think one thing they miscalculated on politically, Ted, and you see it right here in Florida. They just assumed that anybody who, especially Hispanic immigrant to the United States, would just get on board with this. But people like here in Florida with Cubans, and now, of course, we got a lot other more from Latin America, but they realize what, they fled from Castro. And they don't want to go back, so to speak. They love the United States of America. And I think the Democrats actually miscalculated the reaction from the Hispanic community. And we saw that in this last election.
No doubt about it. I mean, there is no doubt about that. If you don't have rule of law in a country, you don't have a country. If you don't have secure borders, you don't have a country. And the Biden administration, I never thought anybody could make Jimmy Carter look bad until Obama, and I don't think anybody can make Obama look bad until Biden. Let's hope and pray that doesn't happen for a very, very long time, and I prefer never again in this country to have an administration that was so anti-American, not just here. And you're talking about how these people were flocking in, praising Biden. These NGOs that are paid for by USAID, the Lutheran Brotherhood, I think it is, and the Catholic Missionary, they were all helping these people, giving them the talking points to come in. And so that's where I think USAID cut those programs. That's an anti-American program, but I'm glad Trump did what he did there to cut those.
Yeah, the pigs are certainly squealing right now. We're going to kind of talk about
like
that.
The warthog.
Yeah, this number 2 on their list is slashing government inefficiency, which is basically the DOGE and offshoots that. According to this article, Trump launched the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, aimed at identifying and eliminating wasteful spending. Trump tapped into Elon Musk to lead as a special advisor to the president and says it's already saved $55 billion in federal spending. So, Elon, I don't know if people saw this interview with Elon and President Trump on the Hannity show a few days ago, but they ought to go back and look at it. But what an amazing job they have done in a short period of time.
Really is. And I mean, you look at the USDA and watch this budget fight coming up, because they put work requirements back in there for the SNAP program, the food stamp, and for Medicaid recipients, Medicaid, not Medicare. They're putting work requirements in there. Just in the food stamp program, you've heard me say this multiple times, there is $22 billion minimum food stamp fraud, $22 billion domestically. And so they've done $55 billion doing with these other agencies. You can do one program and save $22 billion, and you're not taking money away from people or food away from people. What you're doing is making it a program that is going to be sustainable for the people that it was designed to do.
And it really gets me. It just kind of shows the attitude of the establishment, especially the Democrats in Washington, when they talk about how insignificant the money is. Now, we're only talking about the first, month in the office. So it's $55 billion. Oh, that's peanuts. Now, I realize statistically
in Washington, that's peanuts. Oh, it's
right.
Just $5 billion.
But think about the amount of taxes that people pay in there. And if you divide that up, let's just say to the middle class, I'm not talking about the actual dividends they're talking about, but how much, 55 billion or 55 billion here, it starts adding up at some point. It certainly would make a difference to me.
It does. I had a client when I was running, she goes, we don't pay enough money in taxes. The rich need to pay more. And I had just sent a 6-figure check to the IRS. And I'm thinking, I disagree with you. I said, I don't have a problem paying my taxes. What I have a problem is how the government pays or spends our money. And this is going right at that point. And this is, again, it's going to be messy and some people are going to be, gnashing of teeth and turning of heads. But this is an adjustment that needs to happen, because if we don't do this proactively and we wait till austerity measures come when the economy collapses, these programs are going to be eliminated. So we're being proactive. Yeah, it's messy, but it's a heck of a lot better. And if you want to see a great example, go back to France or Greece when they had austerity measures implemented by the government. They were rioting, and look at the bread lines of the Great Depression. Those things are coming if we don't change course, and this administration is changing course. So my hat's off to them, along with my hair.
Yeah, and me, if I want to support circumcisions of dudes in Uganda or something, that should be my personal choice.
Yeah, that's a touchy subject.
Yeah, you shouldn't make it. You shouldn't make it for me, so to speak. Number 3 on their list is protecting women. The accomplishments in his first month: protecting women and children from gender ideology. And we talked about that on a previous show, but that is amazing what Donald Trump, supposedly the enemy of women, has actually done for women in the United States of America in his first month.
No, it is. And, it's common biology. Unfortunately, we have a Supreme Court justice that doesn't know what a woman is, who is a woman, but it's God made two sexes, male and female, and there is a hermaphrodite. It's very rare, but the Democrats made all the other genders, and this is something that goes against biology, creates confusion, especially in our young, and then they want to have counseling and have to have books made of why you might want to be a woman if you're a boy. And it's just, we need to keep the basics here and focus on raising strong kids that know civic duties and things like that. Excuse me. And
I will say this: I don't want to give President Trump too much credit, because God actually sorted this out way before. So, anyway, so let's move on. Number 4 on their list of the top accomplishments in Donald Trump's first month: confirming cabinet nominees. And we just talked about Kash Patel. But the nominees that he's going to get through are amazing. I'm just saying, don't you think?
Oh, I think it is. And it's the fastest nominations for cabinet have been done in the last 3 administrations. Whereas his last administration was terrible because he had so much resistance from Republicans and Democrats. This one, he's got people on board. They're afraid of the Trump train, and they should be, because he's got an agenda. He has the mandate, and we need to move forward. This is going to help this country move so much faster, straightening out this mess that Washington is fighting against, the establishment.
The Trump train, baby. The energy of Donald Trump at his age,
amazing.
Any age, but at his age is amazing. Number 5 on their list is instituting one voice foreign policy. And there's all kinds of things he's done in that area, but you wanted to talk a little bit about Ukraine and what's happening there. So let's just go right into that real quick.
What is, and this is something I've advocated, there should be a policy of the United States of America. It's not Republican or Democrat. And a perfect example of this is our energy policy. Our energy policy should be a policy that makes America secure and independent of any other nation. And like you get an Obama or Biden administration, they want to go in there and go green. And it forces the fossil fuel industry out. Of course, that rises the price of everything and causes inflation. So these policies should be the policy of the United States of America. You brought up Ukraine. And this is something I think I'd like to hear from the listeners and get some input on this, because we've seen a pivot of Donald Trump saying this. I read this yesterday, and I had to delve into the article where he said the war in Ukraine is Zelensky's fault, and that he should concede and give property back to Russia, and that there should be an agreement. We get 50% of their minerals. And I'm like, I'm not sure about this. And so I'd love to hear from the listeners. And somebody brought up to me, would this be like FDR during pre-World War II siding with Hitler when Hitler invaded Poland? Said, well, it was Poland's fault. I think this is something that may be a misstep, or I just don't have the understanding of why he did what he did. I do know that Trump, when he negotiates, it's a terrible deal. And then good comes out of that. So I'm hoping that's what happens here. And I think longer term projection, that you got to be cognizant of how all these other countries look at this, because Taiwan is on the border, or right on the verge of being overtaken by Xi Jinping in China. So what kind of signal does this, number one, send to Xi Jinping? That he knows that Trump may not intervene on Taiwan. And keep in mind, we have a bill that's been bipartisan since the 70s, I believe, called the Taiwan Relations Act, and I won't go into that now. And then the other thing is, what does Taiwan think about? Is the U.S. going to be with us? Because if China takes Taiwan, that brings Japan into a war, and that's for another discussion. And I've sat with leaders of Japan. It says it automatically brings them into a war, which automatically brings the United States into a war because of the agreement that was signed after the Treaty of World War II. So,
well,
long-term ramifications.
I definitely share your concerns over that. The only thing I would fall back on is that I do believe, and you kind of alluded to it in your comments, that Donald Trump, coming from the business world, not being a true political person, although he's certainly great at it, he's going to put the worst possible deal for you in negotiations forward, because that's the starting point, and we're going to work back from that. So I personally think that's what he's doing. But on the national stage, it is a risky way to do it, and
it's real risky.
Easy to misunderstand it.
It is. And, we know Russia invaded Ukraine. And this is where I've stood. People ask me, well, what is the role of the United States in this? I know we are a member of NATO. We helped form NATO. NATO was the North American Treaty Organization that was to prevent aggression from Russia, Germany, or any other rogue nation attacking the NATO nations. We're a member of that, and I think we should be as committed as any other NATO nation. I don't think we should commit any more, and I definitely don't want to commit any of our troops there. But we need to look at the aggressor. The aggressor was Vladimir Putin. This is a guy that poisons people around the world, throws people off of buildings. He threw somebody off a building in Washington, D.C., and then he went into Crimea illegally. He was going to, under the first Trump administration, he could have gone into Ukraine, but he backed off. He went into Crimea under Obama, and we need a strong leader in that. But I hate to see him getting closer to Putin at the expense of what American values are, standing up for liberty and freedom and those kind of things. And that's the danger I see, that if that happens in Taiwan, a very successful democratic run nation, and that's been a strong ally. And if people go back and look at the history, Taiwan was a standalone nation that had diplomatic recognition at the UN as an independent nation until Richard Nixon and Jimmy Carter.
At the end of the day, it's been a pretty amazing month, but we only got a couple of minutes left. And I want to play a quick video of someone you served with. It's major news. but Mitch McConnell made a major announcement yesterday on the Senate floor. Let's play it, and then we'll come right back.
7 times, my fellow Kentuckians have sent me to the Senate. Every day in between, I've been humbled by the trust they placed in me to do their business right here. Representing our Commonwealth has been the honor of a lifetime. I will not seek this honor an 8th time. My current term in the Senate will be my last.
So Mitch McConnell makes that major announcement that he is not running for re-election. Ted, we got a little over a minute left. Give us your thoughts on that.
I want to stand up and applaud him for making that announcement. I'm happy to see him go. I appreciate his service, but I'm glad he stayed there long enough to prevent Merrick Garland from becoming a Supreme Court justice. So for that, let him go out with grace and dignity.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you joining us on our pirate ship, the Ward Scott Files. We hope you have a blessed and great weekend. Myself, the old salty dog, is going to get salty this weekend. I'm going fishing, but I hope you have a great weekend, Ted.
Yep, you too, John. I appreciate it, and I appreciate our listeners and our sponsors. You guys take care. Have a great weekend.
And we'll be back on Monday. Share us, subscribe to us, like our show, and push it out far and wide. Take care.
Take care, John.